2017 NBA draft is one of the deepest in terms of the pure talents who were available. Jayson Tatum, 4-time All-Star, 3-time All-NBA, was selected 3rd overall. Donovan Mitchell, 4-time All-Star, just made 2nd-team All-NBA, taken 13th overall. This draft class's standout rookie, who came second to Ben Simmons for Rookie of the Year. De'Aaron Fox, the Sacramento Kings franchise guard who just had a career year, was taken 5th overall. Fox's college teammate Bam Adebayo had blossomed into a DPOY caliber player who's been to 2 All-Star games. Miami selected Adebayo with the 14th overall pick. Lauri Markkanen had his coming of age this season playing for the Utah Jazz. The 2023 Most Improved Player was taken 7th overall. Although his stint in Chicago didn't end fruitful, it appears the Arizona Wildcat has found his home by the Wasatch Mountains. Jarrett Allen was drafted 22nd overall, and he's been an All-Star and is the defensive anchor for a Cavs squad that finished the regular season as one of the top 3 best defenses in the league. And these are just the players who've participated in an All-Star game. There's still plenty of gems in this draft class. OG Anunoby, the current steals champ who just made the All-Defensive team. Malik Monk, a 6th Man of the Year candidate. Kyle Kuzma, who averaged 21 points per game this season, John Collins, Derek White, Josh Hart, Jonathan Isaac, Luke Kennard, Isaiah Hartenstein, Dillon Brooks, and we can't forget Chris Boucher, who went undrafted. With a class this deep, with all these All-Stars, All-NBA performers, the 2017 NBA draft had so many guaranteed products, so it's unbelievable that the first 2 picks turned out to be some of the biggest what-ifs in basketball. The 2 men who led this pack became plagued with the severest of circumstances. Truly a basketball tragedy. Markelle Fultz was supposed to be the next Dwayne Wade, and Lonzo Ball was destined to bring Showtime back to Los Angeles as the modern-day Magic. The next Dwayne Wade was in this draft, but unfortunately for Fultz, he was taken 12 picks after him by the Utah Jazz, and Showtime relit after Ball's departure. Neither lived up to the expectations burdened upon them, but you can't really blame them. Let's break down how rare and grievous injuries, on top of other things, sidelined and possibly ruined the careers of Markelle Fultz and Lonzo Ball. May 16, 2017. The draft lottery concluded with the Boston Celtics obtaining the 1st overall pick. Directly after the lottery ended, the Boston Celtics would play the Cleveland Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference Finals. As luck would have it, well, let's not say that. The team with the best record in the Eastern Conference doesn't simply luck into the 1st overall pick. By the rules, they can't, and they didn't. The Celtics had the 27th pick. But Boston made an ingenious trade a couple years prior, and that meant the team with the worst record in the league, the Brooklyn Nets, would have to settle with the 27th overall pick, while the contending Boston Celtics would draft 1st overall. Heartbreaking. But hey, that 27th pick turned out to be Kyle Kuzma, who Brooklyn traded with the Lakers to acquire D'Angelo Russell. So really, if the Nets didn't make that boneheaded trade 4 years ago, we would have never witnessed the beauty that was the 2019 Brooklyn Nets. With the number 1 pick in possession, Boston opted to trade down to 3rd overall, swapping picks with the Philadelphia 76ers. Reason being, they knew their guy would be available by that point. Boston was set on drafting this stud coming out of Duke named Jayson Tatum. They weren't interested in Markelle Fultz or Lonzo Ball. And hey, looking back, I guess 3rd time's the charm. With the 1st overall pick, the Philadelphia 76ers drafted Markelle Fultz, hoping he'd be their PG-1 for the future. At that point, the process was in full swing, and prosperity seemed to be over the horizon. The 76ers had 2 supernovas who would usher in the golden age for Philadelphia. Fultz was supposed to be the final piece. Joel Embiid, the towering force down low. Ben Simmons, the 2-way point forward. And finally, Markelle Fultz, the do-it-all guard who was an able shooter. Fultz was considered a good shooter coming out of college. At Washington, he averaged 5 3-point attempts per game and converted them at a 40% clip. His free throw shooting was a big question mark, considering he was 65% from the line as a guard, which is worrisome, especially when you already have a ball dominant player who also has a free throw issue. A little tangent, you know what's amusing about Philadelphia's process group? You look at these three guys, one's a scoring combo guard who lit it up coming out of college. Another at his peak was a facilitating point who could perform every action on the floor except for one thing. The last guy bears a strong resemblance to the dominant big men of ye old. So it's ludicrous that the best shooter out of these three is the goddamn center. Back to Fultz. If you were around to witness the post-draft Markelle Fultz fiasco, you know how confusing all of it was. Fultz appeared to dismiss his jump shot in a noticeable manner. He was always a downhill player, but he never looked uncomfortable shooting the rock, so alarms were ringing. The difficulty snowballed up to his first official game because even with the injury concerns, the 76ers medical staff cleared Fultz to play. And considering the injury histories of Embiid and Simmons, especially at the start of their careers, the 76ers medical personnel don't have the most prestigious log sheet. Fultz didn't have an awful debut per se, but it was clear he shied away from any shot that wasn't under the rim, not to mention his free throw looked unstable. He had one runner which he connected, but that was it, and that trend continued for the next 3 games, till the organization realized there was obviously an error with his diagnosis. Eventually, it would come to light that Markelle Fultz was dealing with thoracic outlet syndrome. Thoracic outlet syndrome, otherwise known as TOS, occurs when there's compression of nerves or blood vessels in your lower neck and upper chest. Common causes include vigorous arm movements, especially in sports. Markelle Fultz throughout his basketball journey had been praised for his work ethic, from his days before the league up to his current situation in Orlando. Even with his struggles, no one questioned the man's work ethic because he was always working. Those questions were more geared towards his teammate Ben Simmons. But as wild as it sounds, his work ethic might have been the cause of his complication. As stated, TOS can be caused from excessive arm movements like sports training, working on your jumper. So is it far-fetched to say leading up to the draft, Fultz trained his jump shot too hard? Developing such an uncommon injury in the realm of basketball does add weight to this claim, and observing his jump shot and free throw shot in college and in his NBA games, it's evident TOS was severely limiting his capabilities. There were reports he couldn't extend his arms above his head, and today, watching him shoot now compared to his first year, the difference in the fluidity of his jump shot and his release is night and day. TOS is not an injury someone can effectively shoot with. Hell, a finger injury can impair a player's jumper. Imagine the damage a neurogenic injury would cause. That man should not have been on the court, but it's Philly we're talking about. Now, of course, we must acknowledge the accusation that was all of the talk during this saga, which was the idea that Markelle Fultz had developed a case of the yips. What's the yips? The yips are a psychosomatic disorder as it pertains to sports and young athletes like Markelle Fultz, not old people. There has been research done on the topic and the answers are more confusing than helpful, really. But anyways, to make it simple, it's when an athlete forgets how to play at the level they've always played at with no physical injury or anything. The issue just appears mental. It's common in baseball where a pitcher out of nowhere will seemingly forget how to throw a strike. This is what was being reported about Fultz, and most of these claims are he say, she say, but one of Fultz's former trainers, Drew Hanlen, did confirm these accusations. However, Fultz and Hanlen had a rough falling out after their summer working together. The whole situation is strange, because when do you hear about a player falling out with his trainer? A trainer's sole purpose is to elevate your game, so a majority of the evidence points to TOS being the underlying issue for why Fultz was struggling to shoot the ball. And considering the fact that he had a very good mid-range shooting season this year, maybe his issue was the injury that affected his nervous system, not his nerves. And if you don't believe me, look at his stats on the Magic. Returning from an ACL injury in his first professional season as a healthy player, his shooting woes leveled. Sure, he wasn't attempting a lot outside the arc or at the line, but his middle ground game was superb. I know this graphic has a lot of numbers on it, but simplify it by focusing on the green. Fultz is a tremendous finisher, still. That ability in his arsenal has never faltered, but he's added the mid-range shot to his bag, and his three-point shot needs work, but he's only 25, and he's on an up-and-coming team. He has all the time in the world to improve his game. In hindsight, Philadelphia rushed him into the fire. In an attempt to prove the process was complete, they hindered their first overall pick's process, but the man slowly built himself back up. Hopefully, now that he's healthy and on the court, he can flourish with the pressure and scrutiny in his rear view. Lonzo Ball was past the scrutiny and pressure that befell him in Los Angeles, but his story is despairing because he can't get on the court. Bad endings stand on the other side of the happy ones. Markelle Fultz's story may conclude with the happy ending. Lonzo Ball's story looks bleak. The Lakers drafted him second overall in hopes that he would be their next franchise point guard. And to make a long story short, he wasn't. But when he got to New Orleans following the Anthony Davis trade, we began seeing flashes of the player he was expected to be. 2 years in New Orleans saw him develop into a reliable starter. He would make his way to Chicago in a sign-and trade after finishing his 2020-2021 campaign, averaging 14 points, 6 assists, 1.5 steals, and becoming a marksman, shooting 8 threes a night on 37%. He only played 35 games in a Bulls uniform, but his performance in those games was brilliant. A 6'6" point guard who had a chop. Oh, and on top of that, he locks down playmaking, basketball intelligence, shot making, perimeter defense, one of the most well-rounded talents in the game. There's only 5 or so teams in the NBA who wouldn't start Lonzo Ball, and he would be a valuable contributor to every team in the league. His ascension should have occurred, but his body forbids him. In January of 2022, Ball was struck with a knee injury, which at the time was reported to be a small meniscus tear. He underwent surgery which ended his season, but the setback seemed minor. There was hope in the summer he'd return for the start of the 2022-23 season, but as the season approached, Ball stated he couldn't even walk up the stairs without pain. It was clear he was in no condition to step on a practice court, let alone make his NBA return. He would undergo a second surgery on his knee, which sat him out for the entirety of the 2023 season. Doctors were baffled by his case because of the dreadful status of his knees. Drastic measures had to be taken. On March 20, 2023, he underwent a third knee surgery, this time a cartilage transplant surgery, the kind of surgery that is rarely seen in the NBA. How rare? Well, if he ever plays another NBA game, he'd be the first person to do so following that procedure. Yeah, a real uphill battle. To perform such a procedure was an indication that every resource was being used to try and bring him back. And as of now, there's talk coming from the Bulls organization that Lonzo Ball may never play again. The Bulls have displayed tremendous loyalty to their guy by not publicly outing him, but in private, that's the sentiment. And there aren't any positives to take away from this. This whole situation just sucks, man. I feel for Lonzo. He really looked like he was coming into his own, and to have it ripped away from him must be anguishing. All we can do now is have faith that the man can make a miraculous comeback. Whether his return is near or never, he's a hell of a talent. Not a lot of PGs ever have had this kind of tool set. It would be a shame if he never plays again, because the game would lose a tremendous player. But all we can do is hope he recovers. Well wishes to Lonzo Ball. Bad endings stand on the other side of the happy ones. Let's hope Lonzo Ball can turn that corner, like Markelle Fultz has done. Thanks for watching.